Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging in something foundational. We're heading back, way back to the Arabian Peninsula.
Yeah.
Specifically, that incredibly complex environment before the light of the seerah, the prophet's life, really began. We're basically setting the stage.
Yeah, and it's absolute vital we start here. You know, the scholars, they always emphasize that the seerah isn't just some biography. It's meant to be a complete guide for the community.
A guide? How so?
Well, it offers lessons for pretty much everything. Peace, war, times of ease, times of hardship. It's really positioned as the essential model for anyone whose goal is, focused beyond this life on the afterlife.
Okay, so let's unpack that core idea a bit.
Yeah.
Our sources seem to hammer this point home. You can't really grasp the Quran, its meaning, its context, without understanding the seerah around it.
Precisely. I mean, the revelation didn't just drop into a void, right? To understand why a certain verse came down, you absolutely need the when, the where, the why, and maybe most importantly, the who.
The people involved, the specific events.
Exactly. What was happening in society? What were the political currents? What did people actually believe before the message arrived? If you ignore that backdrop, that, let's call it the historical terrain.
Then the verses lose something.
They lose their revolutionary punch, their historical power. You miss the scale of the change.
So our mission today is pretty ambitious then. We need to examine this terrain. How did the Arabs actually live? What was the world around them like? Their beliefs, some of which sound, frankly, kind of bizarre, and their politics. Who were they allied with?
Only by getting a grip on this complex foundation can we appreciate the seismic shift that eventually happened.
Okay, so where do we begin? Not with the prophet's birth, you said.
No, we have to go further back. To the very origin of the sacred space itself, Mecca. We need to trace the roots of that original monotheistic idea before it all got fragmented. So we start with the foundation story. Ibrahim and his son Ishmael. And we're relying on really solid sources here, like Muslim and Bukhari.
Right, the story of Ibrahim, Hagar, and Ismail. It starts with a journey, doesn't it? Under pretty difficult circumstances.
It does. Ibrahim, following Allah's command, heads into the desert. He's got his wife Hagar, or Hajar, and their infant son Ismail, who's still nursing. The sources mention Sarah's jealousy briefly, but the real focus is this immense test of faith out there in the wilderness.
And he takes them to a specific spot.
Yes, near where the Kaaba would eventually stand. But you have to picture it then. It wasn't a town. It was just sort of elevated ground in this completely desolate valley. No greenery, nobody living there, just rocks and sand.
And he just leaves them.
Well, he leaves them with minimal supplies, a small bag of dates, a skin of water, and then he turns to leave.
Okay, let's pause on Hagar's reaction here. It's powerful. She follows him, right? Asking the obvious question.
Yeah. How can you leave us here? There's nothing, no food, no people. And Ibrahim's silence is key. He doesn't offer a practical reason.
Because there isn't one. From a human perspective.
Exactly. And that's when she shifts her question. She stops asking about the physical problem and goes straight to the divine command. Did Allah order this? Did God tell you to do this?
And Ibrahim says.
Yes. And her response, it's just immediate, total conviction that Allah will never abandon us. That right there is pure tahad, absolute reliance. That faith, quite literally, is what founded Mecca.
But Ibrahim wasn't indifferent, was he? The sources say he prayed for them.
Oh, absolutely. Once he was out of their sight, he turned toward the spot where the Kaaba would be built and made this incredibly profound prayer, a dua.
What did he ask for?
He prayed, "Our Lord, I've settled some of my family here in this barren valley near your sacred house, so they can establish prayer. So make the hearts of people inclined towards them, give them fruits for sustenance. Maybe they'll be grateful."
And the scholars connect this prayer directly to Mecca's draw today.
Explicitly. They say this ancient prayer is why hearts are drawn to Mecca across all time and distance. It's the fulfillment of that prophetic call.
Okay, but the immediate reality was harsh. The dates and water run out.
Very quickly, Ismail, just an infant, is suffering terribly from thirst and hunger, crying, kicking the ground. Hagar can't bear to watch. So she starts this desperate search.
She goes to high ground.
Yep, the nearest little hill, Safa, climbs up, scans the whole horizon, nothing. No caravan, no sign of life. She comes down, and the sources describe her hurrying across the valley floor.
Like someone carrying a heavy burden.
Exactly. The burden of fear, responsibility, but also that underlying faith, perhaps. She then climbs the other hillock, Marwa.
And she does this back and forth.
7 times. Up Safa, down, across the valley, up Marwa, down, back again. It's born of panic, sure, but it's also this relentless physical effort clinging to hope.
And this becomes a central rite of Hajj, the Saya.
Directly linked by the Prophet himself. This specific historical act of desperation and effort is why pilgrims perform the Sai today. It's like the ritual encodes the lesson. Human effort, the Sai, has to happen before the divine help arrives.
So after the Seventh Circuit, the miracle happens.
Yes. She hears a sound. At first she tells herself, be quiet, thinking it's just exhaustion maybe. But the sound persists, so she shouts towards it. You've made yourself heard. Can you help us?
And it's the angel Gabriel.
It is. Appearing right at the spot where Zamzam is today, he strikes the earth, the sources say, with his wing, and water just bursts forth, bubbling up.
Amazing. And Hagar immediately tries to contain it.
Instantly. She knows how precious this is in the middle of nowhere. She starts scooping sand, making a little basin to hold the water, trying to stop it sinking back into the sand, quickly filling her water skin.
And there's that interesting comment from the prophet about this moment.
Right. He said something like, may Allah have mercy on Ismail's mother. If she hadn't tried to contain it with her hands, Zamzam would be a flowing river on the earth's surface today.
It's such a human detail, isn't it? Her urgency to secure the water.
Totally. A very understandable reaction to this sudden life-saving gift. And it explains, according to tradition, why Zamzam is a well, tapped underground, not a surface spring.
Okay, so now there's water. This changes everything.
Fundamentally. Not long after, a caravan from the Jurhum tribe, originally from Yemen, is passing through. They see birds circling overhead.
A dead giveaway for water.
Especially in a place they knew was barren. So they investigate. They find Hagar. They ask permission to settle there.
And the sources describe the Jurhum positively.
Yeah, as pious people who kept good values. Hospitality, being good neighbors, that was part of their culture. Hagar agrees, lets them stay, but makes it clear. The water is hers. They can use it, maybe pay for it, but they can't claim ownership.
And this gives Hagar and Ismail the community they needed.
Exactly. The valley goes from being a desolate spot to the beginning of a settlement, a proto-city.
And Ismail grows up among them, learns Arabic.
Yes, he's sort of adopted into their culture. And the tradition says he mastered Arabic so well he became even more eloquent than the native speakers. This ties into how Arab genealogists classify people.
Right, the three groups.
First, the disappeared Arabs, like Atad and Thamud, ancient tribes wiped out, usually for defying God. Second, the stock Arabs, the Abtiba, tracing back to Yarubim Katan in Yemen, that's the Jurhum lineage. And third, the Arabized Arabs, the Mustarima, descendants of Ismail, who adopted the language and culture.
So the prophet himself, being Ismail's descendant, fits into this Arabized category.
Correct. It links him linguistically and ethnically right back to this foundational story.
Okay, fast forward a bit. Ismail is older, maybe 16, and Ibrahim returns.
He does, not just for a visit, but with another huge command from Allah.
And Ismail's reaction mirrors his father's faith.
Absolutely, just instant submission. Do what he orders, I'll willingly help you. The task, rebuild the Kaaba.
Rebuild. So it existed before.
That's the tradition. Designated as the first house of worship built by humans on earth, a blessed sanctuary, the Qibla, or direction of prayer for the world. They identify the original foundations, the assizes.
The sources say Adam built it first, or his son.
That's the suggestion, yeah. Built way back, then destroyed in the Great Flood, the deluge. So Ibrahim and Ismail are raising the walls on these ancient buried foundations.
There's a real sense of continuity there, restoring the original sanctuary.
Definitely. And then comes the cornerstone. They need a really solid one for the main corner. Ismail goes looking, comes back empty-handed, but when he returns, Ibrahim has it, the black stone.
Said to be from paradise.
That's the tradition, provided directly by Allah to complete the structure.
And Maqam Ibrahim, the station of Ibrahim.
That comes from the building process, too. Ibrahim would apparently step back onto this one particular rock to check if the walls were straight, spending time observing. That spot became sacred, the place of prayer known as Maqam Ibrahim.
So many Hajj rituals trace directly back to these moments.
Every single one, really. And once the Kaaba is rebuilt, Allah commands Ibrahim to call people to Hajj, to pilgrimage, the Adhan.
And Ibrahim is overwhelmed. Like, how can my voice reach anyone?
Yeah, he wonders, Lord, how can my voice carry across this vast desert? And Allah's response is profound. Your duty is just to call. How it reaches them, Allah knows.
Wow.
So Ibrahim goes to Mount Arafat and makes the call. And Ibn Abbas reports this miracle. Allah made that single call reach every soul he ever created, even those not yet born. And they all replied, Labak. Here I am, ready.
That's incredible. The origin of that deep love for the Kaaba implanted supernaturally.
That's the belief, yes. A mystical connection established right at the beginning.
Okay, so that's the sacred foundation of Mecca. But the rest of the peninsula wasn't necessarily following this pure path, right? Let's shift south to Yemen.
Dome of the stock Arabs, the Cottonites. And the story here revolves around the Marib Dam.
An engineering marvel, I understand.
Absolutely incredible for its time. A massive dam creating immense fertility and wealth for the people of the Sabaeans mentioned in the Quran. Their irrigation system was legendary.
But prosperity led to problems.
Yet arrogance, turning away from God's commands. That's the narrative. And the punishment was the flood of the barrage, the catastrophic failure of the dam.
Which would have wiped out their entire agricultural base.
Instantly, leading to famine, drought, societal collapse. This forced a massive exodus from Yemen, the Great Dispersal. Whole tribes had to leave, scattering across Arabia looking for water, for survival. It completely reshaped the political geography.
And these migrating tribes didn't just wander off, they aligned themselves.
Crucially, yes, they didn't remain isolated. They quickly fell into the orbits of the two great superpowers of the day, Persia and Byzantium. This created distinct political blocs.
Client states, basically.
That's a good way to put it. Two main groups emerged. First, the Ghassanids, or Rassanids. They moved north, settled near Sham, Syria, Jordan today. They essentially became a buffer state for the Byzantines, the Eastern Roman Empire. They fought for Rome, got paid by Rome, adopted some Roman customs.
Okay, and the other group?
The Muntarites. They went northeast, settled in Iraq, near the Persian border. And they did the same thing for the Sassanid Persian kings, the Kisra. They were Persia's Arab shield, their loyal vassals.
So these powerful Arab kingdoms were really proxies in the huge Byzantine-Persian struggle.
Absolutely. They were fighting each other on behalf of their patrons. And this constant conflict, these alliances, shaped everything further south, trade routes, politics in Mecca, politics in Yathrib, which would become Medina. The peninsula was already deeply divided and influenced by these external giants.
A complex web of loyalties long before Islam.
A very complex web. Different tribes had different patrons, different political systems influenced by either Rome or Persia. It wasn't a simple, unified Arab world at all.
Okay, so back in Mecca, despite Ibrahim's foundation, things started to decay spiritually.
They did. Over time, the pure monotheism, the Tawhid, started to fade. The sources blame a lack of scholars to keep the knowledge alive, growing ignorance, just the sheer passage of time eroding memory.
And this coincided with a political change in Mecca.
Yes, a major one. The Jurham tribe, who had been custodians of the Kaaba for generations, were eventually defeated and kicked out by another tribe, the Kuza, led by a very powerful and ambitious figure named Amr ibn Luhay.
And the Jurham, before leaving, did something terrible.
An act of pure spite. They deliberately buried the Zamzam well, filled it in, hid it completely so their enemies couldn't benefit from it.
Wow. So the physical source of the original miracle was literally buried.
Symbolically potent, isn't it? Mecca was left without its sacred primary water source for centuries, maybe around 500 years.
And Amr ibn Luhay takes over.
Mm.
What kind of leader was he?
Undisputed chief. His authority wasn't just military. He built massive popular support through incredible generosity, especially towards pilgrims. He was famous for Rafada, feeding pilgrims, slaughtering thousands of animals apparently, and Sakaya, providing water. Since Zamzam was gone, he had to organize bringing water in from outside Mecca, often mixing it with raisins or dates to make it more refreshing.
So he's the great provider. That gives him immense influence.
Unquestioned influence. His word effectively became law, legislation. People depended on him, they revered him for his generosity, and this popularity allowed him to introduce radical religious changes.
This is where the idols come in.
Exactly. The story goes, Amr traveled to Sham, to Syria, on business. He saw people there, the Amalekites, worshiping statues. He asked them why.
And they said the idols helped them.
Yeah, they claimed the idols acted as intermediaries, bringing rain, wealth, victory, all the things Amr was trying to provide for Mecca, especially the water.
Lacking water in Mecca, he saw this as a solution.
He concluded it was a good innovation, a bida hazana in his mind, a useful addition. He asked for one of their statues, and they gave him one called Hubal, possibly representing the sky or rain god.
And Hubal was the first idol brought to Mecca.
The very first idol introduced into the Kaaba precinct after the time of Ibrahim and Ismail. Amr placed it inside the Kaaba itself and ordered the people to worship it. He told them it would bring them closer to Allah, bring rain, bring success.
And because of his status, they just obeyed.
Instantly. His word was law, backed by his reputation for generosity.
And it didn't stop with Hubal.
No, that was just the beginning. He then introduced other major idols across Arabia, Lat, Uzza, Manat, associated with different places. He even encouraged each tribe to adopt its own personal idol to keep at home, but also to bring to the Kaaba area during pilgrimage season.
So the Kaaba area becomes crowded with idols.
Completely. And the sources really emphasize Amr's role here. There's a famous hadith where the Prophet himself identifies Amr ibn Luhay as the very first person to fundamentally corrupt the religion of Ismail, changing Tawhid by setting up these statues.
It wasn't just adding statues, though, was it? It changed the core rituals,
Yeah.
like the talbiyah, the pilgrimage chant.
Yes, the original talbiyah was this beautiful, stark declaration of monotheism. Labbaik, Allahumma labbaik, labbaik, la sharika laka labbaik. Here I am, Allah, here I am, you have no partner, here I am. Absolutely clear.
But Amr changed it.
He innovated. He added a loophole, a way to justify their polytheism, their shirk. He taught them to add, Ila sharrekan hualaka, tamlikuhu mamalak. Except for a partner that is yours, you own him and whatever he owns.
Wow. That completely twists the meaning.
It's the critical justification. They didn't necessarily stop believing Allah was the supreme creator, the ultimate owner. But this addition allowed them to say, okay, these idols are partners owned by Allah, but they still have some power, some merit. We can invoke them. They bring us closer to Allah. It's the shirk of associating partners in worship and invocation.
So they still acknowledged Allah, but diluted his uniqueness.
Precisely. They compartmentalized. Allah is the creator, but these lesser beings handle the day-to-day interventions, the rain, the victory.
And Amr's influence went beyond just worship. He started making laws.
Yes, this is crucial. He began legislating about everyday things, particularly livestock, effectively setting up his own rules parallel to, or even replacing what they understood as God's rules. This led them into shirk of obedience, following human laws over divine ones.
What kind of laws were these? The sources mention specific names.
Yeah, these very specific and economically quite damaging taboos. There was the hum, a stud camel that had successfully sired, say, 10 offspring. After that, he was declared sacred, couldn't be ridden, couldn't be used for work, just had to be left to graze.
So a valuable animal rendered useless.
Exactly. Then the saiba. This was usually a female camel. If someone made a vow, if I get better from this illness, I'll dedicate my camel, and the vow was fulfilled, that camel became saiba. Set free, forbidden to be slaughtered or used, just roaming around consuming resources.
Okay, what else?
The bahira. This was a female sheep and ewe that had given birth a certain number of times, often 5 times, producing twin, so 10 lambs. Her ear would be slit as a mark, and she became taboo, no eating her meat, no using her wool, again, economically unproductive. And the wasila, another category of dedicated ewe.
And the sources are clear this was human invention.
Absolutely. They explicitly state these were lies invented against Allah, making lawful things forbidden and vice versa, based purely on superstition and Amr's authority. It was a direct challenge to God's sovereignty over daily life and sustenance.
It shows how shirk wasn't just theology. It permeated their whole social and economic system.
Deeply. And when the Quran later specifically condemns these practices by name, it's hitting at the heart of this entrenched system established by Amr ibn Luhay.
There's one more really strange story about idols from this period, Isaf and Naila.
Oh, yes. That one really highlights the level of spiritual decay and forgetfulness. It's quite bizarre.
What happened?
Isaf was a man from Yemen, Naila a woman, also from Yemen. They were apparently lovers. During the Hajj pilgrimage, overcome by passion, they committed fornication right next to the Kaaba, inside the sacred sanctuary.
Massive desecration.
Huge. And the tradition says Allah punished them instantly, transforming them into stone statues right there on the spot.
As a warning.
Exactly. A very graphic lesson for all pilgrims. This is what happens when you profane the sacred space. The 2 stones were then placed, one on Safa and one on Marwa, as constant reminders.
But people forgot the warning.
Over time, yes, the original lesson was lost. And Amr ibn Luhay, this great innovator of idolatry, saw these 2 prominent stones and eventually ordered people to adore them, to worship them.
So a sign of divine punishment became an object of worship.
Unbelievably, yes. They were venerated right up until Islam arrived and cleansed the area. It just shows how far things had drifted from the original purpose. Some sources even mention, sort of anecdotally, that people traveling would sometimes just mold dates into a little statue to worship on the road, and then if they got hungry,
they'd eat their god.
Essentially, yes. It points to a profound level of, well, spiritual confusion, to put it mildly.
Okay, so Mecca is deeply steeped in this revived, complex paganism under Amr. But you mentioned other religions were present in Arabia too. Judaism, Christianity.
Yes, absolutely. We need to remember the peninsula wasn't monolithic. While Mecca developed this specific brand of idolatry, other areas had significant Jewish and Christian populations, often linked to political situations. Yemen, or Himyar, is a key example for Judaism, and Najran was famously Christian. Yathrib, later Medina, also had a very strong Jewish presence.
How did Judaism become established in Yemen? The story involves another king, right?
It does. It starts, interestingly, with a dream. A king of Himyar named Rabbi Nasser had a disturbing dream. Back then, diviners and astrologers held huge sway because, ignorance and superstition were widespread. So he consults them.
And they interpret the dream.
Yes, they tell him it foretells an invasion. The Abyssinians, the Ethiopians from across the Red Sea, will conquer Yemen.
A major threat.
Huge. Fearing for his family line, Rabbi Nasser actually sent his family away for safety, up to Al-Hira in Iraq near the Persians. He left a relative, maybe a son, to rule in his place. But this prophecy sort of hangs over Yemen, this impending conflict with Christian Abyssinia.
Okay, then later comes another more famous king, Tuba.
Yes, Tuba, sometimes called Taban Asad. He's described as a powerful, wealthy, respectable king who traveled widely. During one of his trips, possibly to Sham, he had left his son behind in Yathrib, Medina, and while Tuba was away, his son was killed by some of the locals in Yathrib.
Oh, wow. So Tuba returns seeking revenge.
Big time. He comes back with a massive army, fully intending to wipe Yathrib off the map to avenge his son's murder.
So he attacks the city.
He does, and the fighting is fierce. But then something strange happens that astonishes Tuba. The people of Yathrib fight him hard all day long.
But at night?
At night, they send him huge amounts of food, feasts, provisions. It's this bizarre display of traditional Arab hospitality, even towards the enemy besieging their city. Tuba found it deeply confusing, but also perhaps admirable.
Still, he was going to destroy them.
That was the plan, until two figures intervened, two Jewish rabbis who lived in Yathrib.
The Jewish community there was significant.
Very. These rabbis approached Tuba. They warned him, essentially, don't do this. If you attack this city, Allah will destroy you, because this place, Yathrib, is destined to be a place of refuge, an asylum for a future prophet.
They knew about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, from their scriptures.
That's exactly what they told Tuba. They said it was written in their Torah, the signs of this final prophet, descriptions of him, his companions, and that Yathrib would be his eventual home. This connects directly to that Quranic verse stating the people of the book knew him like they knew their own sons. They had textual prophecies.
How did Tuba react to this?
He was apparently deeply moved by their wisdom, their explanation of the Torah, the gravity of their warning. He was convinced. He converted to Judaism on the spot.
Just like that. He converts and calls off the attack.
Yes. He embraced Judaism and ceased hostilities against Yathrib immediately, a huge turning point.
Okay, so Tuba is now a Jewish king. What happens next?
He starts heading back towards Yemen, his homeland. On the way, they pass near Mecca. Some people from the Hudhau tribe, maybe trying to stir up trouble or curry favor, approach Tuba. They tell him about the Kaaba, but not its sanctity. They tell him about the treasures supposedly hidden inside.
Trying to tempt him to raid it?
Exactly. They mentioned gold, jewels, apparently two famous golden gazelles that had been buried near the Zamzam, by the Juham tribe when they fled. They hoped Tuba would sack Mecca and destroy the Kaaba.
But the rabbis were still with them.
Yes, thankfully. They intervened again. They warned Tuba, no, don't listen to them. This Kaaba is the most sacred, most venerated house of God on earth. They advised him instead to show respect, to perform tawaf, circumambulate it.
Did the rabbis themselves perform tawaf?
This is interesting. They said they couldn't. Why? Because the Meccans, under Amr ibn Luhay, had polluted the sanctuary with all those idols. It violated the pure monotheism of their own tradition, the tradition of Musa, Moses.
So Tuba performs tawaf alone.
He does, respecting the rabbis' advice and the sanctity of the house. Then the story goes, he had a dream telling him to cover the Kaaba. So he ordered it to be covered, first with a simple linen cloth.
And later with something more elaborate.
Apparently he had another dream, and then ordered a second, much finer, covering a special embroidered cloth from Yemen, the kiswa. This act by Tuba, the Jewish king, is credited as the origin of the tradition of covering the Kaaba.
Which continued for centuries.
Right. Though, side note, it eventually caused problems. People kept putting new cloths over old ones year after year until the sheer weight threatened the Kaaba's structure. Eventually, Abdul-Muttalib, the prophet's grandfather, had to remove the accumulated layers. But the tradition itself started with Tuba.
Okay, so Tuba returns to Yemen, a convert to Judaism. Does he try to convert his people?
He does. He calls the Himyarites, his people, to embrace Judaism, but they resist. They were deeply attached to their traditional idol worship and, significantly, the veneration of fire. They had a sacred fire they worshipped.
So a religious standoff, how was it resolved?
They agreed on a dramatic trial by fire. This is apparently a local custom. They had a special building or place housing the sacred fire. If there was a dispute, the opposing parties would stand before it, and the fire would supposedly come out and consume the party that was wrong.
Seriously?
That's the account. So the two Jewish rabbis stood on one side, and the Himyarite priests, or charlatans, the fire worshippers, stood on the other. The fire emerged, and it consumed the idol-worshipping priests, leaving the rabbis unharmed.
Wow, that must have been convincing.
It apparently was. Seeing this, the people of Himyar collectively abandoned their old ways and embraced Judaism. That's the traditional account of how Judaism became the dominant religion in southern Arabia at that time.
But this period of unity under Tuba didn't last.
Sadly, no. History rarely stays simple. After Tuba died, his son Hassan took the throne. He's described as becoming arrogant, maybe unstable. He got this grandiose idea of conquering Persia, one of the world's two superpowers. Utter folly.
The nobles must have been horrified.
They were. They saw it as national suicide, so they conspired. They approached Hassan's own brother, Amr, and made him an offer. Kill Hassan and we'll make you king.
And Amr agreed. Fratricide to the throne.
He did. He murdered his brother Hassan, but the consequences were immediate and personal.
What happened?
The sources say he was instantly struck with crippling insomnia and overwhelming guilt, couldn't sleep, tormented by remorse. He consulted doctors, diviners. They all told him the same thing. The illness stemmed from the murder, and the only cure.
Let me guess. Kill the conspirators.
Exactly. They advised him to eliminate everyone who had plotted with him, perhaps thinking it would silence the source of his guilt or paranoia.
Did he do it?
He did. He systematically executed his former allies, plunging the kingdom deeper into crisis. He spared only one man, a noble named Duruain, who had actually advised him against killing Hassan in the first place.
And this Duruain had something for him. Yeah.
Yes, a sealed letter he had written before the assassination. Amr opened it, and it contained these chilling lines of poetry, basically predicting Amr's fate. You sold sleep for wakefulness, so listen to the news from Duruain. The Himyarite nobility chose betrayal over loyalty. It confirmed his guilt and the price of his ambition.
What was the result of all this betrayal and bloodshed?
Complete chaos. After Amr died, the descendants of the earlier king, Rabia Nasir, fought amongst themselves for power. Yemen descended into brutal civil war. The unified kingdom Tuba had built completely fragmented. The south, which had briefly been a center of organized monotheism, collapsed into internal conflict and weakness.
So bringing it all together, we've covered a huge amount of ground. We started with Ibrahim, Ismail, Zamzam, that pure monotheistic root.
Right, the foundation.
Then the Marib Dam disaster, scattering the tribes, leading to those big political blocs allied with Byzantium and Persia.
The fragmentation, yeah.
Then the darkening in Mecca itself. Amr ibn Luhay burying Zamzam, bringing in Hubal, all those pagan laws and idols.
The corruption of the original faith.
And finally, this complex story of Judaism entering Yemen through King Tuba, only for it to dissolve into political chaos and civil war.
It paints a picture, doesn't it? The Arabian Peninsula before Islam was anything but simple or empty. It was incredibly complex.
Yet layers of conflicting history.
Conflicting spiritual narratives, absolutely. That original monotheism buried deep under generations of idolatry. You had organized religions like Judaism and Christianity making inroads, often tied to politics, and the whole region was politically fragmented, basically caught between the proxy wars of the two superpowers, Rome and Persia.
So when we think about the Sirah starting, the world it entered wasn't a blank slate.
Not at all. The sources make that crystal clear. It wasn't a spiritual vacuum just waiting to be filled. It was more like a battlefield of deeply ingrained conflicting histories, loyalties, laws, and beliefs. Human authority, like Amr ibn Luhay making religious law, had largely replaced divine authority in practice, even if they still paid lip service to Allah.
Understanding all this really highlights the sheer scale of the challenge facing the prophet, doesn't it?
Immense. The task was monumental. To somehow cut through all these layers, restore the purity of Ibrahim's message, unify these fragmented tribes with their competing loyalties, and challenge both the deeply embedded idolatry and the reliance on foreign powers and man-made laws.
So next time you read a verse or an event from the Sirah, it's crucial to remember this backdrop. Remember the buried foundations, the buried well, the centuries of deviation?
It really sets the stage, and it leaves us with a powerful question to think about, doesn't it? When this new, uncompromising message of pure Tawhid, absolute divine unity and sovereignty finally arrived, how would these entrenched systems react? How would the pagan laws, the idol worship often justified, remember, as ways to get closer to God, respond to being utterly dismantled?
That clash between the reclaimed ancient truth and the established political and religious structures of the time, that's the core tension.
Exactly. That's the profound struggle we'll be diving into next.